I think you could turn a lot of different garments into a boho maxi dress, and that's what I'm going to do today. And I'm going to use this old swimsuit cover up that I've always loved, but it's getting a little dingy and a little tired. So let's get to it. I'm going to use this cover up. The first thing I need to do is see these gappy sort of holes. That's fine as a cover up, but as a dress, it's not going to work. So I'm going underneath and I'm going to fill those in with lace pieces. The gauchos that I'm wearing, they are tutorial, and I'll put the link down in my description. These are 2 inches from here to here. So I'm going to cut out 2-inch strips of lace. Now I'm going to cut these to size. When I sew them, I don't even think I need to pin this. I just need to line it up with the original seams. And I will use a small zigzag stitch when I sew, and I'm going to use purple thread because I will be dyeing this purple. Now I want to cut this collar off. And I'm going to remove all the buttons. So this is going to be a V-neck pullover. And I tried this on and stuck a pin where I'm comfortable with my V being. And then I pinned it all the rest of the way down, and I overlapped where we removed the buttons over top of the buttonholes so you didn't see the buttonholes. And now I'm going to sew this together. And I'll start right here, and I'll come in 1/4 of an inch with a straight stitch and sew all the way down to the bottom. Now, I don't want my neckline to come over and drop off like this. I want it to taper. And, you know, just kind of do that the best you can. There is no exact science, just kind of a little artistry there. I'm going to line up that neckline, maybe stick a pin or two so it doesn't shift around on me. Now I'm just going to clean that up a little bit. I have some pieces of crochet table runner, and I cut this at a point, and here's the shoulder seam, right about where I stopped cutting at the neckline. I'm going to start sewing. I won't even pin this. Zigzag stitch, overlap that raw edge a little bit all the way down, and I'm going to stop and trim that off where the front sort of overlaps, right about there. I'm not cutting it now because I don't know how much this will take. And then I'll take an identical piece, also cut to a point, start it up here at the neckline, do the same thing, only this time, so this will be cut about there. I'll overlap and come all the way down to that decorative piece right there. That's what that looks like. The back of the neck, still raw. We're going to have a lot of raw edges on this, so I'm going to leave that. Maybe later I'll do something, maybe not. I need to add a piece to the bottom so that it's a maxi dress. I want mine to be about ankle length or a teeny bit longer. So I put this on, and then I took my yardstick, kind of looked in the mirror and decided where it's going to hit my ankle, kind of put my thumb there and decided I want to add 24 inches. This is what I'm going to add to the bottom. This is 22 inches tall. I wanted to add 24, so I'm saving a couple inches to add a little lace at the bottom. And the perimeter of this is a little extra because it's pleated. It's 106 inches around, and I doubled that, and this is 212 inches long. And this is a hodgepodge of swimsuit cover-ups. When I find white cotton swimsuit cover-ups at the thrift store, I almost always get them because they dye nice and they're a nice flowy fabric. I have a piece of a skirt, this right here, and I have some lightweight linen tablecloth pieces. So it's kind of a cool combination. This is one long strip right now. I went to the ends and I'm going to sew the ends together. I'm putting right sides together. I'm going to do a 1/2 inch seam allowance with a straight stitch right here. By the way, all those different pieces that I added, I sewed everything right sides together with 1/2 inch seam allowance and then trimmed it with my pinking shears. I like having this blue tablecloth for you so that you can see the white easier, but for what I'm about to do next, I'm gonna have to lose it, so it might be a little bit harder to see the white fabrics. Here's my bottom ruffle. It's inside out, and I'm looking at the top. Now I need to shrink this to 106 inches, the perimeter of the bottom of my swimsuit cover-up. So what I'm going to do is baste it and shear it. In order to not have my thread be so incredibly long where it gets tangled and confusing, I'm going to do half at a time. So I stretched this all out and I stuck a pin right here and I stuck a pin right here, dividing this into 2 parts. Now I'm going to kind of scooch the top layer away from me, and I'm only going to baste from this pin to this pin first. Now I need to shrink each side, so I want a total of 106 inches. I need to shrink each side to 53 inches. And so I have a needle and thread doubled and knotted. It has to be at least that 53 inches. And I'm using purple because, again, I'm dyeing this purple. And I'm just going to start at one end and do a little knot so that this doesn't come undone. And then I'm going to baste along the edge, maybe about 1/4 inch down. My stitches will probably be about 1/2 inch apart. And I'll do that till I get down to the other pin at the other end. So I have one end one side all sheared, half of it. I made a mark on my table from here to here. That's my 53 inches. So now I'm just kind of looking to make sure this is that length, and I will fluff up these pleats in a little bit. But first, I'm going to take that thread now that I know it's the right length, and I'm going to tie a knot into it so it doesn't go anywhere. Now that I have a knot in it, I can cut off the rest of my needle and thread, and then I'm just going to play with this a little bit to try to get those pleats evenly distributed. Now I have to do this half, so I'm just going to pull it forward over top of my existing pleats, kind of get those pushed back and out of the way. I'll start and end where my pleats start and end on the opposite side. Here's the bottom of my swimsuit cover-up. It's right side out, and my ruffle is still inside out. And I marked the back center of my swimsuit cover-up with a pin in the center. So now, the center of that skirt looking piece that I added to that big ruffle, I want that in the center. So I did mine a little differently. So I marked the center of that skirt piece. Now I'm going to pull my swimsuit cover up inside this ruffle, and I'm pinning it right sides together, right here and right here in the back. Now I'm going to go to the side seam of my dress that's inside here, and I'm going to pin the very side of that ruffle to there, and I'll do that to the front and to the other side. That gets me balanced, a good place to start. And you'll play with these pleats throughout this whole pinning process. But so I have a pin here on the side, a pin here in the middle of the back. Now in between these two pins, right here, I can't see that hand. Okay, in between these two pins, I'm going to stick a pin in the center. And then I'm going to keep pinning the center between each pin until the whole thing is pinned. Now that I have the whole perimeter pinned, I can sew this together. 1/2 inch seam allowance and a straight stitch. Just be patient and take your time with this. This is probably the most tedious part, but after this, it gets a lot more fun. Very lovely. Now what I want to do is top stitch that seam we just added. Now I have my dress inside out, and I am going to take that seam we just made. There's the bottom of my dress. I'm going to push it down towards the bottom. Mine doesn't really want to go that way, but I'm going to make it. And I will press it all the way around. I have my dress right side out again. Here's the seam we just made, and we pressed it down this way. Now along the seam, I'm going down 1/8 of an inch, and I'm going to make a nice straight line, making sure to catch that seam allowance underneath. Okay, all done top stitching. Now I'm back on the inside, and I have this raw hem here still, or seam, I mean. I'm going to trim mine with the pinking shears to prevent fraying. You can finish your seams however you like. Now everything's nice and smooth, like it's always been there. Down at the bottom, I want to add these beautiful layered lace pieces. I made these yesterday and I filmed it, so let's watch. I had a lace panel, and I cut strips approximately 3 foot long and 2.5 inches wide. It doesn't really matter how long, they just need a total 7 yards because the perimeter of my dress is approximately 6 yards. Then I pulled out my basket of lace. These are all scraps from other projects. Here's a pile I've already cut. They range from about 4 inches to 2 foot long. It doesn't really matter. And the height ranges from about 1 inch to 1.5 inches. I'll put a link to my Pink Power electric scissors down in my description. They're wonderful for projects like this. Now I'm going to sew 2 rows on. I'll sew one at the bottom, overlapping about 1/4 inch, and I'll sew one to the top, lining the top edge of the lace to the top edge of the lace strip. Now I'm going to zigzag stitch across the very top, and then on the bottom piece, it will be at the top of the crochet strip. I'm dyeing the bottom half of my dress green, so I'll use green thread. Now to sew these on, here's the bottom of my dress. I'm not sewing all these together. I think they'll actually sew on smoother if I can overlap them and not have one continuous piece. So I will take one of my pieces, overlap about 3/4 of an inch, zigzag stitch all along. And then when I run out of one, I'll overlap probably a good 3 inches and keep on going. Now I have 2 more long pieces for the sleeve, done the same way, except the lace here was about 4 inches. And my sleeve already has sort of a little flare, so I'm not going to add anything to make that flare. I'm just going to trim it out. I'll start at the bottom seam, sew it all the way around like we did the bottom of the dress, and then when I get back to this side, I'm going to overlap that about 2 inches. The lace is so beautiful. There's the arms, the bottom. Now I want to dye it. I want to dye it two-toned. I want it purple on top and I want it green on the bottom. What I'm going to do first is, this is the seam that we sewed this ruffle on. About 5 inches down from there, that's where I want the green to start. I want the purple up here. So I'm going to take kind of a heavy-duty rubber band. I'm actually using 2 to make it heavy-duty. And I'm going to rubber band that about 5 inches down, just so there isn't any confusion when it's in my pot. I know what part gets purple and what gets green. So I'm doing the purple part first, and I have a turkey pot. It's about a 32-quart pot, and I have it filled pretty full with water. I heated the water to about 200 degrees, and then I turned my flame on the teeniest tiny little flame just to keep that warm. Then I added a couple pumps of Dawn dish soap and Rit Dye More for synthetics, royal purple. Synthetic Dye More Rit dye can be used on natural fabrics, but you can't do that in reverse. So I added about 3/4 of this bottle to the pot and I stirred it up. I got my dress wet and I have a bucket here because I'm going to sew part of the dress, but then I want the rest to sort of fall on this so it doesn't accidentally get underneath that flame. Here's my, that's from my sink. I don't know what's in there. Coffee grounds, I think. There's my rubber band. So I'm going to try to get this all the way in up to that rubber band. You should stir consistently for 30 minutes. While that's cooking, I'm going to start a pot. It's kind of like a big soup pot about here, and I want this green. Now I am going to use Rit Emerald Green. This is for natural fabrics, so you pour a cup of salt in instead of the dish soap. So I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to add some of the green. I may add different colors with it if I'm not liking the shade. I'm just going with what I have. Okay, I think I have the mixture that I like. Looks like that. And what it was, I'm guessing here, about 7 parts of the emerald green, 3 parts of daffodil yellow Rit Dye More, and 2 drops of chocolate brown. Be very careful. This color can take over everything and turn it a muddy brown, so be very careful when adding brown. I'm going to wring this out, but I'm not going to wash or rinse it. I'm going to stick the purple part in this bucket, and then I'm going to put the white part in the green pot. I've never done this two-tone before, so I'm just kind of figuring out as I go. So I'm going to take this now and put it in the green, and I think I'm going to remove this rubber band so we don't get some sort of tie-dye effect, which might not be bad either. Now what I want to do is give it a bath in Color Stay dye fixative. It's supposed to reduce bleeding and enhance the color. So I filled my sink about 1/3 of the way with the hottest tap water and poured 1 bottle of this in and stirred it up. Now I'm going to move this fabric around for 20 minutes. I will stick it in my washer on a rinse and spin cycle, and I will lay this outside to dry. All done. I just love it. It feels wonderful on. Remember to keep those fabrics, if you're adding a lot of volume like I did, keep those light and weight because you don't want this to get heavy and uncomfortable. What a fabulous transition piece from summer to fall. If it's warm outside, you can wear sandals. If it's cooler, you can wear boots, a poncho, a vest, a duster, a jacket. I have it with thrifted cowboy boots, thrifted hat. All my jewelry is thrifted or secondhand, except for the earrings that I'm wearing. And those were gifted to me from a friend, and she makes those. I have it with this little fringe bag. I have a tutorial for that, and I'm going to put the link in my description. This, from here on out, how I'll wash this is I'll put it in my washer on a gentle or delicate cycle, cold water, and a gentle soap, and line dry. Okay, I'm going to bring this in closer so you can have a better look, and I thank you so much for watching.